Hey Virgo, I'm so glad you found this one today. Uh, mm, Honestly, put everything else down for a few minutes because what came through for this reading asked to be heard slowly and with your full attention. There is a sound that exists in the space just before something changes everything. Not a warning, not a signal, something subtler than that. The way the air thickens almost imperceptibly before a storm that will turn out to be nothing like the ones that came before it. The way a room feels different in the seconds before someone walks through the door who is going to matter. You've felt that quality before, that particular suspension of ordinary time, even if you've never had a word for it. It may be surrounding you right now, in ways you're noticing and in ways you aren't yet. I want to talk about calls that go deep, not in the literal sense, though the literal sense may well apply here, but in the broader, older meaning of the word. The calls that reach past the surface of who you've been presenting yourself as, past the version of you that has learned to be palatable and manageable and appropriately contained, and make contact with something underneath all of that. Something that has been waiting with the particular patience of things that have nowhere else to go for someone to finally speak to it directly. Because there are conversations that change the weather of a life. Not by resolving everything, resolution is rarely what makes something significant, but by cracking open a layer that had been sealed, by introducing a current of honesty or tenderness or raw, unmediated truth into a space that had grown accustomed to the managed version of things. And that crack, that small, almost imperceptible fracture in the carefully maintained surface, lets something in that changes the temperature of everything that follows. This reflection invites you to consider what layer of yourself has been sealed for long enough that even the thought of someone speaking directly to it produces something equal parts terrifying and relieving. Because some of you have been carrying a version of yourself that no one currently has full access to. Not because you are dishonest, not because you are performing something false, but because depth requires a specific kind of safety before it will surface. And that safety, for many people, is the rarest thing in any landscape of connection. You can be surrounded by people, genuinely loved by people, and still feel the particular loneliness of someone whose deepest rooms have never had a visitor. Picture those rooms for a moment. The ones inside you that stay dim not because they contain anything shameful, but because the light of other people's attention has never quite reached them. The rooms where your real questions live, not the questions you ask out loud, but the ones that surface at 3 in the morning in the unguarded space between waking and sleep, when the performance of the day has finally been set down and something truer rises in its place. The rooms where your actual grief lives, your actual longing, your actual vision of what this life could feel like if it were fully, honestly, unapologetically yours. It's possible that a conversation is approaching that knows how to find those rooms. This reflection invites you to consider if someone were to call you in whatever form that call takes, whether through a phone, through a presence, through a letter, through a moment of unexpected honesty in an ordinary setting, and speak directly to the version of you that almost no one sees, would you let them in? Or would the unfamiliarity of being truly reached make you reach for distance instead? Because being deeply seen when you have spent a significant amount of time being only partially seen is a disorienting experience. It doesn't always feel like relief in the first instant. Sometimes it feels like exposure, like a light being turned on in a room you'd forgotten was dark, and the sudden brightness makes you want to reach for the switch again to restore the familiar comfort of the dim. Not because the light is unwelcome, but because your eyes haven't adjusted yet. Because being known, fully known, requires a surrender of control that the carefully managed self finds deeply threatening. Some of you watching this have been in a season of surface living at the level of the manageable, the presentable, the version of events that can be narrated without too much risk. And there is nothing wrong with that. It is sometimes exactly what survival requires. But seasons have a way of completing themselves. And the particular season of surface may be approaching its natural end, not because something outside you has decided it's time, but because something inside you has grown too large to keep fitting inside the container you've been using to hold it. This reflection invites you to consider what truth about yourself, or about what you need, or about what you are no longer willing to accept has grown so large lately that it has started pressing against the walls of the container you've been keeping it in. Because that pressure, that internal insistence of something demanding more space, is not a problem to be solved. It is information. It is the most reliable signal available to a person navigating their own life. The signal that says something is ready to move, to surface, to be spoken, to be received by someone capable of holding it without flinching. And the call that may be coming, the important one, the deep one, the one that this reading is circling and gesturing toward it, may be arriving precisely because that pressure has built to a point where the universe of your own life is ready for a release valve. Not a collapse, a release. The specific relief of a pressure that has been held too long, finally finding in the voice or presence of someone willing to go deep, the permission to exhale. Let me talk about what deep actually means in the context of a conversation that matters. It doesn't mean dramatic is less than #0. 5 is greater than. It doesn't mean confessional or tearful or structured around revelation the way a scene in a film might be. Deep, in the truest sense, is quieter than that. It is the moment in a conversation when both people simultaneously stop performing and start actually speaking. When the words being exchanged are the real ones, not the safe ones. When something passes between two people that neither of them could have fully scripted in advance because it required both of them to be genuinely present to emerge, those moments are rarer than they should be. And when they arrive, they tend to leave a mark, not a wound, but a watermark. Evidence of how high something real was allowed to rise. This reflection invites you to consider, when was the last time you were in a conversation that left a watermark, and what did it require of you to allow that level of depth to happen? Because depth is not only received, it is also offered. And the call that may be approaching, however it arrives, however unexpected its timing or its form, will only go as deep as you are willing to go. The other person may bring the intention, the willingness, even the words, but you hold the decision of how far into yourself you are willing to travel in the company of another human being. And that decision is always, in every conversation that matters, entirely yours. Some of you need to hear this clearly, and without softening, you are allowed to be complex in front of someone who is choosing to call you. You are allowed to not have everything resolved before the conversation begins. You are allowed to arrive at the exchange still mid process, still figuring things out, still holding contradictions that haven't yet resolved themselves into something clean and presentable. The idea that you must be finished before you are worth talking to is one of the quietest and most pervasive lies that careful people tell themselves. And it has kept more genuine connection at a distance than almost anything else. You are not required to be finished. You are only required to be present. The power is yours. It always has been. The power to pick up when something important calls. The power to go deep when someone offers you the invitation. The power to stop managing your own depth and simply, finally, carefully, with both the terror and the relief of it, let yourself be known. A very important call is coming in, and it gets deep, not eventually. In this season, in this window, in this particular convergence of readiness and circumstance and something inside you that has been pressing against its container long enough to know it is time. Trust yourself with this. The depth in you was never something to be managed. It was always something to be met. And the right voice, asking the right question, in the right moment, may be closer than you think. Before you go, I genuinely want to hear from you in the comments. What is the one conversation you've been waiting to have, the deep one, the real one, the one that keeps surfacing no matter how many times you push it back down? And is there someone in your life right now who you feel could actually hold your depth without flinching? Drop it below. I read every single one, and I mean that completely. See you in the next one. And listen, the call that goes deep doesn't just change the conversation, it changes the person who answers it. Take care.